In the year and at the hour of the dragon, a baby who was 5/8 Chinese, 1/4 English, and 1/8 Dutch was born in San Francisco, California, in the United States. The baby's mother, Hoi, named him Jun Fan in honor of his paternal grandfather and his birthplace. However, it was the midwife, Mary Glover, who suggested the name Bruce. His last name was Lee, taken from his father, Hoi Chuen, who was in New York at the time. His father was a Cantonese opera actor, performing in the city, which holds special significance for me. I am Leo Imamura, and I will explain how this chubby baby, born in the United States, raised in Hong Kong, with Chinese, English, and Dutch heritage, became Bruce Lee, the greatest martial arts icon of all time. Once upon a time, there was a fighter whose mission was to expose the false masters of traditional Chinese martial arts. He often challenged these so-called masters, believing it would be contribute to the improvement of martial arts. Long before Xu Xiaodong, the MMA fighter who became famous on social media, there was Wang Shongliao, a martial arts enthusiast in search of its essence. Wang had heard of great heroes of the past like Chang Sun, the seventh patriarch of Wing Chun system, who was a close friend of his grandfather. He was looking for a true master. We are in the early 1950s, the British colony of Hong Kong, where Wang Shongliao lived, was receiving numerous refugees from mainland China at the time. Many of them were highly skilled martial artists. I want to mention one in particular. His name was Ip Man, a disciple of Chang Sun himself. One's quest ultimately brought him to Ip, and in its encounter he met a genuine Kung Fu master who, through a highly significant experience, changed his opinion about traditional Chinese martial arts. Patriarch Ip Man not only demonstrated his superiority, but also made sure not to harm the young Wang Shongliao. I remember that at the time, Ip Man was 59 years old. This event occurred 2 days before the Chinese New Year of 1953. It was witnessed by two brothers. One of them was Cheung Chuk Him, who later introduced Bruce Lee to the great master. During this period, Bruce Lee was already using his stage name, which will become eternal for the Chinese audience, Lei Siu Long, the little dragon Lee. From 1953 to 1955, he participated in 17 film productions. These were the most active years for the young actor. Therefore, the hyperactive Bruce Lee, who could channel all his energy into the performing arts. However, problems with his production company led to a shortage of work for the restless teenager. Thus, Bruce Lee began to devote all his energy to street fights, testing his combat skills. Rebellious, he also tested the limits of teachers and classmates. He was considered a poor student and was expelled from La Salle College before repeating 2 years. At home, His behavior contrasted with that of his old brother, Peter, who was introspective and a dedicated student and was his father's favorite. Although Bruce was following in his father's footsteps, this did not excite him as he knew the instability it entailed. Perhaps this situation further aggravated the frustration of young Bruce, who was extremely aggressive, a typical unruly boy in the prime of adolescence. Note that Bruce Lee's situation was not different from that of a typical teenager, full of energy, with rangy hormones. He just didn't know how to deal with the situation he was living. The cinema no longer occupied him. School was too boring, so he dedicated himself to situations outside the classroom, involving provoking teachers and classmates, as well as dealing with rival gangs and the Chinese mafia, who were interested in recruiting him. Therefore, it's easy to label someone like this as hyperactive, suffering from attention deficit in class. The challenge is to identify what lies behind the rebellious behavior of this young man. How to see the positive qualities hidden behind seemingly negative characteristics. Hence the importance of identifying one's calling and following a mentor. After all, Hong Kong at the time presented a highly challenging scenario for a good education. During this time, more and more young men were arriving from different parts of China, but mainly from the southern province. One of them, 2 years older than Bruce Lee, had arrived in this British colony directly from Toi San in Guangdong province. He came with his mother, Moi Chang Big Seong, as his father had already passed away. The pretext was to visit his sister, Mo Chen, who already lived in Hong Kong. His name was Mo Yakai, who would later be introduced to Patriarch Ip Man by a cousin, Moi Bin Hua. After a few months of interaction with the great master, he began to be called Muyan by Ip Man. Unlike Bruce Lee, who was combative and a fighter, Muyat was calm and artistic. Like his father, Mo Chun Lang, he had a calling for the fine arts. But what did they have in common? A challenging adolescence in 1950s Hong Kong, a love for reading, and a desire to make a difference in the world. Thanks to a great mentor who was Patriarch Ip Man, both became exceptional martial artists, each in their own way, as it should be in the Kung Fu dimension. For me, both were fundamentally important. One was my inspiration to identify my calling, and the other was my mentor. Both were responsible for transforming a frustrated Japanese-origin adolescent living in a country still full of racial prejudice like Brazil in the 1970s. Bruce Lee inspired me to believe in myself and discover my calling, while Muyat guided me in fulfilling my calling, leading me on the difficult journey of living my own life and enabling me to become a world-class professional martial artist. And now, tell me about you. How do you discover or are discovering your calling? How have you been dealing with your internal and external enemies? How have you worked on your ability of forget what needs to be forgotten? How have you supported by obstacles? write on the comments, and contribute to make this series even richer in information and opinion. Thank you very much for our attention, and I'm waiting for you at our next meeting to talk more about Bruce Lee's Wing Chun. A big hug.